The stagecoach rattled into Fort Lyon, Colorado, on a blistering August afternoon in 1878, carrying a secret that would change 2 lives forever. Sophia Granger pressed her gloved hand against the leather seat as the wheels jolted over another rut in the dusty road, her heart hammering against her corset with such force she feared the other passengers might hear it. Through the small window, she caught her first glimpse of the town that was supposed to be her salvation. A collection of weathered wooden buildings clustered along a wide main street, flanked by the endless prairie stretching toward distant mountains. The air shimmered with heat, and dust devils danced between the scattered cottonwood trees that offered the only shade for miles. She had answered the advertisement 3 months ago, when desperation had become her only companion in that cramped Philadelphia boarding house. Samuel Jacobs' letter had been simple and honest, or so it seemed. He needed a wife, someone to help build a life on his cattle ranch outside Fort Lyon. He promised respect, a home, and the chance to start fresh in the wide open spaces of Colorado territory. He never asked about her past, and she never volunteered the truth. The warrant had been issued 2 weeks before she left Philadelphia. Sophia still remembered the moment she learned about it, the way her landlady's face had gone pale as she whispered the news. The bank president's son had been found dead, and somehow, impossibly, they were calling it murder. Sophia had been the last person seen leaving his office, where she worked as a secretary. She had rejected his advances for months, enduring his wandering hands and crude suggestions because she needed the wages. That final day, he had cornered her, torn her sleeve, and she had pushed him away. Just pushed him. But he had stumbled, struck his head on the corner of his heavy oak desk, and when she fled in horror, he was still breathing. She swore he was still breathing. By the time she returned with help, he was dead, and his father's influence had already twisted the narrative. The bruises on her arms from where he had grabbed her became evidence of a struggle. The ripped sleeve became proof of her violent nature. Philadelphia society had already convicted her before any trial could commence, and Sophia knew the truth would never matter when wealth and power controlled the courtroom. So she ran. She became a mail-order bride to a man she had never met, traveling across half a continent to escape a noose that waited for a crime she did not commit. The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the general store, and the driver's weathered face appeared at the window. "Fort Lyon, miss." End of the line. Sophia gathered her carpetbag and stepped down onto the wooden sidewalk, her legs unsteady after days of travel. The main street stretched before her, lined with false-fronted buildings that seemed to lean against each other for support. She counted a saloon, a blacksmith shop, a hotel, the general store, and what appeared to be a marshal's office. Her blood turned cold at the sight of that last building, with its barred window and official notice board mounted beside the door. "Miss Granger." She turned to find a tall man standing a few feet away, hat in hand, watching her with cautious gray eyes. Samuel Jacobs was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-weathered skin and the lean, muscular build of someone who worked hard for his living. His dark hair needed cutting and his clothes were clean but worn. He was not handsome in the conventional sense, his features too rugged and his nose slightly crooked, but there was something solid about him, something that suggested reliability. "Mr. Jacobs." She managed a small curtsy, aware of how absurd the gesture must look here in this frontier town. "Just Sam, please." His voice was deep and gentle. "Welcome to Fort Lyon. I hope the journey was not too difficult. It was long, but I survived it." She tried to smile, but her eyes kept drifting toward the marshal's office. Were there wanted posters there? Had news of her alleged crime traveled this far west? Sam followed her gaze and frowned slightly. That's Marshal Wheaton's office. He's a fair man, keeps the peace around here without too much trouble. He paused, then added carefully, "You look nervous. Is something wrong?" Everything was wrong, but Sophia forced herself to meet his eyes. "Just tired from the journey. It has been a very long few weeks." He accepted this explanation with a nod, though something in his expression suggested he did not entirely believe her. "I have a wagon waiting. The ranch is about an hour's ride from town. I thought, if you are not too tired, we could stop by Reverend Porter's house on the way. He can perform the ceremony, make everything proper and legal." Legal. The word sent a chill through her despite the oppressive heat. Once they were married, she would be Sophia Jacobs, and perhaps that new name would be enough to protect her. Or perhaps she was dragging this decent man into a disaster he could not imagine. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, that would be fine." They walked together to where his wagon waited, a sturdy vehicle hitched to two patient horses. Sam helped her up to the seat with a gentle hand under her elbow, then loaded her trunk and carpetbag into the back. As they rolled through town, Sophia noticed people watching them with curious eyes. A woman in a faded calico dress paused in sweeping her porch to stare. Two men outside the saloon exchanged knowing looks. In a town this size, the arrival of a mail-order bride was probably the most exciting thing to happen all month. "Folks are friendly here, mostly," Sam said, as if reading her thoughts. "They'll be curious about you, but they mean no harm. We take care of our own in Fort Lyon." "Our own," Sophia repeated softly. She was not sure she would ever truly belong anywhere again. The Reverend's house sat on the edge of town, a neat little structure with a well-tended garden that seemed to mock the surrounding wilderness. Reverend Porter was a thin man with kind eyes and a warm smile, and his wife fussed over Sophia like a mother hen, insisting she needed to freshen up before the ceremony and pressing a small bouquet of wildflowers into her hands. The wedding itself took perhaps 10 minutes. Sophia stood beside this stranger and repeated words that bound her to him, aware with every syllable that she was building her new life on a foundation of lies. Sam's hand was warm and steady when he slipped the simple gold band onto her finger, and when the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, his kiss on her cheek was respectful and brief. "There now," Reverend Porter said cheerfully. "You are properly wed in the eyes of God and the law. May you have many happy years together." Sophia tried not to think about how few years she might have if the law caught up with her. They rode out of Fort Lyon as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The prairie stretched endlessly around them, dotted with sagebrush and the occasional stand of cottonwoods marking where a creek cut through the landscape. Sam kept the horses at a steady pace, not pushing them in the heat, and after a while he began to talk. "The ranch is not much yet," he admitted. "I have about 200 head of cattle, some horses, a cabin that needs work. I won't lie to you, Sophia. Life out here is hard. The winters are brutal, the summers are scorching, and there are days when the work never seems to end." He paused, then added, "But it is mine. I built it from nothing, and I am proud of what I have accomplished." "Why did you want a wife?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Sam was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the horizon. "I suppose I got tired of being alone. A man can work himself to death out here and have nothing but a gravestone to show for it. I wanted someone to build something with, someone to share the good days and the hard ones." He glanced at her. "I know this is not a conventional arrangement. We are strangers. But I hope in time we can become friends at least, maybe more if we are fortunate." There was such honest longing in his voice that Sophia felt her throat tighten with guilt. He deserved the truth, but she could not give it to him. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. "I will try to be a good wife," she said quietly. "I can cook and sew and keep a house. I am not afraid of hard work. I never thought you were." Sam's smile reached his eyes this time. "You traveled halfway across the country to marry a stranger. That takes a kind of courage most people never have to find. Or desperation," Sophia thought, but she did not say it aloud. The ranch appeared as the sun touched the mountains, a small cabin set in a sheltered valley with a creek running nearby. There was a barn, a corral with several horses, and in the distance she could see cattle grazing on the hillside. It was humble and rough, but something about the sight made her chest ache. This could have been a home if circumstances were different. Sam helped her down from the wagon and carried her trunk inside. The cabin was a single large room with a fireplace at one end, a cast iron stove, a table with 2 chairs, and a bed covered with a patchwork quilt in the corner. Everything was scrupulously clean but Spartan, the home of a man who owned only what he needed. "I know it is not much," Sam said, suddenly sounding uncertain. "I can sleep in the barn tonight, give you privacy. We do not have to, I will not expect anything from you right away." The kindness in his offer made something crack in Sophia's chest. She set down her carpetbag and turned to face him. "Sam, there is something I need to tell you." His expression became guarded. "All right." She opened her mouth, but before she could force out the confession, the sound of approaching horses made them both freeze. Sam moved to the window and pulled back the curtain, his body going tense. Riders coming, 3 of them. He turned to her, his face grave. "Do you know anyone who might have followed you here?" The blood drained from Sophia's face. "It has only been a few weeks. How could they have found me so quickly? So there is someone looking for you." It was not a question. Sam's jaw tightened and he moved to the corner where a rifle leaned against the wall. "Tell me quickly. What did you do?" "Nothing. I swear to you I did nothing wrong. There was a man in Philadelphia, my employer's son. He tried to force himself on me and I pushed him away. He fell and hit his head and died, and they are calling it murder, but I never meant to hurt him. I was just trying to protect myself." The horses were close now, their hoofbeats clear in the evening air. Sam stared at her for a long moment, and Sophia braced herself for his anger, his rejection, his fear. Instead, he took a long breath and said, "Get behind me. Whatever happens, stay behind me. Sam, I cannot let you are my wife." The words were simple and absolute. "That means something to me. Now get behind me." The riders stopped in front of the cabin, and Sophia heard boots hitting the ground. Sam positioned himself between her and the door, the rifle held loosely in his hands but ready. When the knock came, sharp and authoritative, he called out, "State your business." "Marshal Wheaton, Fort Lyon. I need to speak with you, Jacobs." Sam opened the door, keeping his body in the doorway so no one could see past him. "Marshal, this is an unexpected visit." Marshal Wheaton was a stocky man with steel-gray hair and a weathered face that had seen too many hard years. Behind him stood 2 deputies, both young and nervous-looking. The marshal's eyes were sharp as he studied Sam. "Got a telegram this afternoon from Philadelphia. They are looking for a woman, Sophia Granger, wanted for murder. Description matches the mail-order bride you picked up today." He paused. "I need to speak with her, Jacobs. This is not a request." "She is my wife now," Sam said, his voice level but hard. "Sophia Jacobs. We were married by Reverend Porter this afternoon. That does not change what she is accused of. It changes everything." Sam shifted his weight, and though he did not raise the rifle, the gesture was clear. "She says she is innocent, and I believe her. So unless you have proof of her guilt beyond some rich man's accusations, you will need to go through me to take her." The marshal's expression darkened. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be. I respect you, Jacobs, but I have a duty to uphold the law." Then uphold it properly. Where is your warrant? Where is your evidence? Or did Philadelphia just send a telegram demanding you arrest any woman who matches a vague description? There was a long silence. Finally, the marshal said, "The warrant is being sent by post. Should be here in a week or two." "Then come back when you have it. Until then, my wife stays with me." Sophia could barely breathe as she watched from behind Sam's shoulder. The marshal's hand moved toward his gun, and both deputies tensed. For a horrible moment, she thought blood would be spilled on her account, that this man who had promised to protect her would die for a lie she had run from. Then the marshal's hand moved away from his weapon, and he shook his head. "I always took you for a sensible man, Jacobs. This is foolishness. This is what is right. She deserves a chance to prove her innocence, not to be dragged back in chains based on an accusation. The law does not work that way. Maybe it should." Sam's voice was quiet but firm. "Go back to town, Marshal. When you have proper legal authority, we can discuss this again. Until then, you are trespassing on my land." The standoff stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then Marshal Wheaton stepped back, his face troubled. "I will be back, Jacobs, with that warrant. And when I come, I expect you to do the right thing." "I always do," Sam replied. The marshal and his deputies mounted their horses and rode away into the gathering darkness. Sam stood in the doorway until the sound of hoofbeats faded completely, then closed the door and set the rifle aside. His hands were shaking slightly. Sophia found herself shaking too, tears streaming down her face. "You should not have done that. You should not have put yourself at risk for me. You do not even know me." Sam turned to face her, and his eyes were fierce. "I know you were terrified when you got off that stagecoach. I know you have been running from something that scared you worse than the idea of marrying a stranger. And I know, in my gut, that you are telling the truth about what happened." He moved closer, his voice softening. "I also know that I stood in front of Reverend Porter today and promised to honor and protect you. I do not make promises lightly, Sophia." She sank into one of the chairs, her legs unable to support her any longer. "He will come back with the warrant, and then what? They will hang me for something I did not do, and you will be branded a criminal for helping me. Then we have a week or two to figure out the truth." Sam pulled the other chair close and sat facing her. "Tell me everything that happened in Philadelphia, every detail, no matter how small. If you are innocent, there has to be some way to prove it." So Sophia told him. She spoke of Charles Hartwell, the bank president's son, and his months of unwanted attention. She described the other secretaries who had quit rather than endure his behavior, and how she had stayed because she desperately needed the money. She recounted that terrible final day, the torn sleeve, the shove, the sickening sound of his head striking the desk. The way she had run for help, only to return and find him dead and accusations already forming. "There was a bruise on his temple," she said, "where he struck the desk, but his father claimed I had beaten him with something, that it was a vicious attack. The police never even questioned me properly. They just listened to Mr. Hartwell's version of events and issued the warrant." Sam listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she spoke. When she finished, he sat back and was quiet for a long time. "This Charles," he finally said, "did he have a reputation? Were there other women he had bothered?" "Many, but none of them would speak against him. The Hartwells own half of Philadelphia's banks. Going against them is financial suicide. Here they own nothing." Sam stood and began to pace. "We need to get statements from those women, evidence of his character. We need a proper inquest into how he died, not just his father's version. We need—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "We need time and resources we do not have." "You should just let them take me," Sophia whispered. "It would be easier." "Easier is not the same as right." Sam knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. His palms were calloused from years of ranch work, rough and warm. "Listen to me. I have lived my whole life trying to do what is right, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. I am not about to stop now. We are going to fight this, Sophia. Together." She looked into his eyes and saw something she had not seen in months: belief. This man, this stranger who had become her husband, actually believed her. The relief was so overwhelming she began to sob in earnest, and Sam pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried out weeks of terror and loneliness and desperation. When she finally quieted, he helped her to her feet. "You are exhausted. You need to rest. Take the bed. I will keep watch tonight, make sure no one tries to surprise us." "Sam, I cannot take your bed." "You are my wife," he said again, and there was something almost sacred in the way he spoke the words. "The bed is yours as much as mine, but I think we could both use a little time to adjust to this situation, so I will sleep by the fire tonight. No arguments." Sophia was too tired to protest. She changed into her nightgown behind a blanket Sam hung for privacy, then climbed into the bed. The quilt smelled like soap and sunshine, and the mattress was surprisingly comfortable. Through the gap in the blanket, she could see Sam settling by the fire, the rifle across his lap, his eyes on the door. She had married a stranger this afternoon. Now that stranger was willing to face down the law for her. The thought was terrifying and humbling in equal measure. As she drifted toward sleep, Sophia found herself praying, really praying for the first time in months. "Please, let there be a way through this. Please, do not let him suffer for my mistakes." The next morning dawned clear and hot, sunlight streaming through the cabin's small windows. Sophia woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon and found Sam at the stove, cooking breakfast with the efficiency of someone who had been taking care of himself for a long time. "Morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder with a tired smile. "Hope you are hungry. I make a decent breakfast, even if my other cooking skills are limited." They ate in companionable silence, and then Sam said, "I have been thinking about our situation. We need to send some telegrams, make some inquiries in Philadelphia. Find out exactly what evidence they have, if there were any witnesses to what actually happened." He paused. "It is going to cost money we do not really have to spare, but it needs to be done." "I have some money," Sophia offered. "I saved what I could before I left. Save it. We might need it for other things." Sam finished his coffee. "I need to check on the cattle this morning, make sure they have not wandered too far. You will be safe here. I will keep my old revolver with you, just in case." The idea of being alone terrified her, but Sophia nodded. "I can clean the cabin, start earning my keep around here." Something flickered in Sam's expression. "You are not a servant, Sophia. You are my wife. This is your home now." The words warmed something inside her that had been cold for a very long time. After Sam left, leading his horse toward the distant cattle, Sophia set about exploring her new home properly. The cabin was rough but well built, with tight chinking between the logs and a sturdy roof. Sam's few possessions were neatly organized: clothes in a trunk, books on a small shelf, tools hung precisely on the wall. She found a photograph in a tin frame tucked in the trunk, showing a younger Sam with an older couple who must have been his parents. She spent the morning cleaning and organizing, finding a strange comfort in the domestic tasks. The physical work helped quiet her racing thoughts, at least temporarily. By midday, she had swept the floors, washed the breakfast dishes, and started a stew for dinner with supplies from the root cellar. Sam returned in the afternoon, dusty and tired, and stopped in the doorway to stare at the transformed cabin. "You have been busy." "I needed to keep occupied," Sophia admitted. I am not good at sitting idle with my thoughts. He nodded, understanding. I am going to ride into town, send those telegrams. Do you want to come with me, or would you rather stay here? The thought of facing the stares and whispers in Fort Lyon made her stomach clench, but hiding seemed cowardly. I will come. If I am going to live here, I cannot hide forever. They rode together in the wagon, and Sophia tried to keep her spine straight and her head high as they entered town. She was not a criminal. She had nothing to be ashamed of. But the looks they received were not quite hostile, just curious and measuring, and she found herself moving closer to Sam on the wagon seat. At the telegraph office, Sam composed 3 messages. One to the Philadelphia Police Department requesting details of the evidence against Sophia. One to a lawyer he knew in Denver asking for advice, and one to Reverend Porter's wife, asking if she knew anyone in Philadelphia who might help investigate the truth of what happened. The telegraph operator, a balding man with spectacles, read the messages with poorly concealed interest. By tomorrow, everyone in Fort Lyon would know the details of Sophia's situation. Small-town gossip spread faster than wildfire. As they left the telegraph office, Marshal Wheaton stepped out of his office across the street. He did not approach them, but his eyes followed them with a steady, measuring gaze. Sam nodded a greeting but kept walking, his hand light on Sophia's back, protective and reassuring. They stopped at the general store for supplies, and the proprietor's wife, a plump woman named Beatrice, greeted Sophia with surprising warmth. Heard you and Sam got married yesterday. Welcome to Fort Lyon, dear. We are glad to have another woman in town. There are precious few of us. Thank you, Sophia said, caught off guard by the friendly reception. Beatrice leaned closer, her voice dropping. Heard some other things too. Just want you to know not everyone believes every story that comes over the telegraph. You seem like a nice girl and Sam is a good man. That is enough for me. The unexpected kindness made Sophia's eyes sting with tears. That means more than you know. As they loaded supplies into the wagon, a commotion at the end of the street made them both turn. A stagecoach had arrived, and from it emerged a well-dressed man in his 50s, his expensive suit and polished shoes marking him as distinctly out of place in Fort Lyon. Behind him came 2 hard-looking men who were clearly hired muscle. Sam's hand tightened on the wagon rail. That does not look good. The well-dressed man spoke briefly with Marshal Wheaton, gesturing emphatically. Even from a distance, Sophia could see the marshal shaking his head, his expression troubled. Then the well-dressed man pointed directly at her, and her blood turned to ice. That is Mr. Hartwell, she whispered. Charles's father. The banker started walking toward them, his hired men flanking him. Marshal Wheaton followed, looking distinctly unhappy. Sam stepped in front of Sophia, his body language shifting into something protective and dangerous. Mr. Hartwell stopped a few feet away, his cold eyes fixed on Sophia. There she is, the woman who murdered my son. Marshal, arrest her immediately. Mr. Hartwell, I explained to you that I need proper legal authority, Wheaton said, his voice tight with frustration. I cannot just arrest someone on your say-so. I am a respected banker. My word should be sufficient. Your word is not the law, Sam said, his voice hard. And your son was a predator who hurt women for sport. Maybe if you had raised him better, he would still be alive. Mr. Hartwell's face turned purple with rage. How dare you? My son was a fine young man, and this woman beat him to death in a fit of rage when he rejected her advances. That is a lie, Sophia said, finding her voice despite her terror. Your son attacked me. I was defending myself. His death was an accident, a terrible accident, but not murder. You have no proof of that. And you have no proof of your version of events, Sam countered. Just your word against hers and the power to make people believe you because you are rich." One of Hartwell's hired men moved forward, his hand on his gun. "Watch your mouth when you speak to Mr. Hartwell." Sam did not flinch. "This is Colorado territory, not Philadelphia. Your boss's money does not mean much out here, and threatening me on my own land is a good way to get hurt." Marshal Wheaton stepped between them, his hand raised. "Everyone calm down. Mr. Hartwell, I understand you are grieving your son, but vigilante justice is not how we do things in Fort Lyon. When the proper warrant arrives, I will execute it according to the law. Until then, Mrs. Jacobs is free to go about her business. This is an outrage. I will have your badge for this. You are welcome to try." Wheaton's voice was steel. "But right now, you and your men need to step back before this situation becomes something none of us want." The standoff held for a long, tense moment. Then Hartwell snarled, "You have not heard the last of this," and stalked away, his men following. Wheaton turned to Sam and Sophia, his expression weary. "You are making my life very difficult, Jacobs." "I am just trying to protect my wife from a miscarriage of justice." "Maybe, but that man has connections. He can make trouble for all of us." The marshal sighed. "I am trying to do this right, but you need to understand the position I am in. When that warrant arrives, I will have to act on it." "I understand," Sam said, "but until then, we have the right to prove her innocence." Wheaton nodded slowly. "Get whatever proof you can and get it fast. I do not think Mr. Hartwell is a patient man." They finished loading the wagon and headed back to the ranch in tense silence. Sophia's hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them in her lap to hide it. The reality of her situation had just become brutally clear. It was not just faceless law enforcement pursuing her anymore. It was a grieving father with wealth, power, and the determination to see her hang. "He is going to bribe the marshal," she said quietly, "or threaten him, or find some other way to force the issue." "Maybe," Sam allowed, "but Wheaton struck me as a man with integrity. He is going to try to do this by the book. And if he cannot," Sam's jaw tightened, "then we will deal with that when it comes. One problem at a time, Sophia." Back at the ranch, Sam immediately set about securing the property. He checked the rifle and revolver, made sure there was plenty of ammunition, and positioned supplies near the windows. His movements were efficient and practiced, and Sophia realized he had done this before. "You have fought before," she said. "In a war, Confederate Army," he admitted quietly. "I was 16 when I enlisted, convinced I was fighting for something noble. Took me a while to understand what the war was really about, what we were really defending." He paused, his eyes distant. "I lost a lot of friends, lost my faith in a lot of things. When it ended, I came west to start over, to build something clean and honest." He looked at her. "I swore I would never fight again unless it was for something truly worth protecting. And you think I am worth protecting? I think the truth is worth protecting. And you are my wife, which makes you worth protecting by definition." That night, they sat by the fire after dinner, and Sam asked her about her life before Philadelphia. Sophia found herself talking about her childhood in Boston, her parents who had died of influenza when she was 15, the series of positions she had taken to support herself. Sam listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was truly paying attention. In turn, he told her about growing up on a small farm in Tennessee, the war that had torn his family apart, the years of wandering before he found this land and decided to make something of it. His dreams were simple: a successful ranch, a family, a life built on honest work. Hearing him speak, Sophia felt the weight of what she had stolen from him by bringing her troubles to his door. "I am sorry," she said into the comfortable silence. "I should have been honest with you from the beginning, before the wedding. You deserved to know what you were getting into." Sam considered this, firelight playing across his weathered features. "Would you have told me if there had been time? I wanted to. This afternoon, before the marshal arrived, I was going to tell you everything. Then that is enough for me." He reached across the small space between their chairs and took her hand. His grip was warm and solid. "We all have things we are running from, Sophia, pasts that haunt us. The question is not what we ran from, but what we run toward." She looked at their joined hands, his so much larger than hers, calloused from work but gentle in their touch. Something shifted in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. This man, this stranger who had become her husband, was offering her something she had not had in months: hope. The days that followed fell into a strange routine. Sam worked the ranch while Sophia tended the cabin and garden, and in the evenings they talked. Really talked, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Sam taught her to ride properly, taking her out across the prairie where the endless sky made Philadelphia seem like a distant nightmare. She showed him the small luxuries she could create with limited resources, turning their simple meals into something approaching fine dining. They were careful around each other, polite and respectful. But Sophia found herself watching Sam when he did not know she was looking. The way he moved with unconscious grace, his strength tempered by gentleness. The rare smile that transformed his stern face. The patience with which he taught her about the ranch, never making her feel foolish for not knowing things that were second nature to him. 5 days after Mr. Hartwell's arrival, a response came to one of Sam's telegrams. The lawyer in Denver had done some digging and found 3 other women willing to testify about Charles Hartwell's behavior. All had been subjected to unwanted advances, and one had been physically assaulted. All had been too afraid of the Hartwell family's power to speak up before, but the lawyer had convinced them that their testimony could save an innocent woman's life. "This is good," Sam said, reading the telegram for the 3rd time. "This establishes a pattern of behavior. It supports your version of events." "Will it be enough?" Sophia asked, afraid to hope. "I do not know, but it is something." That evening, as Sophia was preparing dinner, hoofbeats announced visitors. Sam grabbed the rifle but relaxed when he recognized Reverend Porter's buggy. The Reverend and his wife had come with news. "My sister lives in Philadelphia," Mrs. Porter explained, bustling into the cabin with a basket of fresh bread. "I wrote to her about your situation, dear. She has been making inquiries, very discreetly of course." She pulled an envelope from her bag. She found the doctor who examined Charles Hartwell's body. Sophia's hands trembled as she opened the letter. The doctor's statement was brief but damning to the prosecution's case. Charles Hartwell had died from a single blow to the temple, consistent with striking a hard surface during a fall. There were no other injuries, no signs of a beating or sustained attack. The doctor had noted defensive bruises on Sophia's arms that matched her account of being grabbed, but the police had ignored his report in favor of Mr. Hartwell's accusations. "This proves it was an accident," Sophia breathed. "This proves I was telling the truth." "It is a start," Reverend Porter said, "but you will need to present this evidence properly, in a court of law with proper representation." "Which means going back to Philadelphia," Sam said quietly. The room fell silent. Sophia looked at the letter in her hands, then at Sam. "If I go back, they will arrest me, put me in jail until the trial, and with Mr. Hartwell's influence, I might never see the inside of a courtroom." "Not if you have proper protection," the Reverend said. "Sam, you have a cousin in the territorial government, do you not? Perhaps he could help arrange for a fair hearing." Sam nodded slowly. "Robert is a territorial judge. He is a hard man, but he is honest. If I explain the situation, he might be willing to intervene." He looked at Sophia. "But it would mean you turning yourself in. trusting the system to work the way it is supposed to. "The system has not worked for me so far," Sophia said bitterly. "Because you have been running," Mrs. Porter said gently. "Sometimes the only way through is straight ahead, dear, with the truth as your weapon and good people at your side." That night, after the Porters left, Sam and Sophia sat up late discussing their options. They could run further west, try to disappear into California or Oregon territory. But that meant a life spent looking over their shoulders, never able to settle or build anything permanent. Or they could fight, gather the evidence they had, and face the accusations head-on. "I am afraid," Sophia admitted. "Terrified, actually. What if it is not enough? What if Mr. Hartwell's money and power still win?" "Then at least you will have tried," Sam said, "and you will not have to live the rest of your life as a fugitive." He paused. "I know I am asking a lot. We have only known each other a week, but I believe in you, Sophia. I believe you are telling the truth, and I believe the truth matters." She studied his face in the lamplight, seeing the determination there, the quiet strength. This man had stood between her and the law without hesitation, had protected her, believed in her when he had every reason to turn her away. Somewhere in the past week, he had become more than a convenient escape. He had become someone she trusted, someone she cared about deeply. "If we do this," she said slowly, "I want you to know something. This past week, living here with you, has been the happiest I have been in years, maybe ever. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever, the feeling that I matter, that I am worth defending. Whatever happens, I want you to know that." Sam reached across the table and took both her hands in his. "Sophia, I have been alone for a long time. Built this ranch with my own hands, convinced myself that was enough. But this week, coming home to find the cabin warm and dinner cooking, sitting by the fire and talking with you, has shown me what I have been missing." His voice roughened with emotion. "I am falling in love with you. I know it is fast, maybe too fast, but it is true. And I will fight for you with everything I have, not just because it is right, but because losing you would break something in me I am not sure could be fixed." Sophia felt tears streaming down her face, but for once they were not tears of fear. "I am falling in love with you too. Which terrifies me almost as much as the warrant, because now I have something to lose." Sam stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. She could feel his heart beating against her cheek, strong and steady. When he tilted her face up to his and kissed her, it was gentle and reverent, a promise sealed with touch. Sophia melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt, and for that moment, nothing else existed but the two of them and this fragile, precious thing growing between them. When they finally pulled apart, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "We are going to get through this, together, and then we are going to build a real life here, raise a family, grow old together. That is a promise." "I am going to hold you to that," Sophia whispered. They decided to send a telegram to Sam's cousin, the judge, in the morning. But that night, Sophia did not sleep by the fire. Sam held her in his arms in the bed they now shared. And though they did not consummate their marriage, the intimacy of simply being held, of feeling safe for the first time in months, was more than enough. Sophia drifted to sleep listening to Sam's steady breathing, allowing herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could work out. The next morning, they rode into Fort Lyon together to send the telegram. The town seemed quieter than usual, and Sophia noticed people watching them with a mixture of curiosity and sympathy. Beatrice from the general store waved a greeting. The blacksmith nodded respectfully. Whatever gossip had been circulating seemed to have shifted in their favor, at least among some of the townspeople. Marshal Wheaton was waiting at the telegraph office. "I need to speak with you both. In my office, if you please." Sam's hand moved protectively to Sophia's back. What is this about? Just come. It is important. In the marshal's office, they found Mr. Hartwell seated in a chair, looking smug. Sophia's stomach dropped, but Wheaton did not look pleased with the banker's presence. "Mr. Hartwell has made a proposal," the marshal said, his tone neutral. "I wanted you to hear it before I make my decision." Hartwell leaned forward, his eyes cold. "I am a reasonable man. I understand that you people out here have different ideas about justice, so I am willing to make a deal. If Sophia Granger returns to Philadelphia voluntarily and stands trial, I will ensure she receives a fair hearing. I will not use my influence to sway the jury, but if she continues to hide behind her new husband, I will make both of your lives a living hell. I have the money and the connections to do it." "That is not a deal, that is a threat," Sam said flatly. "Call it what you like. But consider this. If she is truly innocent, a fair trial will prove it. If she is guilty, then justice will be served. Either way, this matter will be resolved." Sophia found her voice. "How can I trust that you will keep your word? You have already twisted the truth to make me look guilty." Hartwell's expression flickered with something that might have been grief. "My son is dead. Nothing will bring him back, but I need to know the truth of what happened. If you truly killed him in self-defense, then perhaps I can find some measure of peace in that. But I need to hear it said in a court of law, with proper evidence and testimony." It was the first time Hartwell had acknowledged the possibility that Sophia might be telling the truth. Sam and Sophia exchanged glances, and she saw her own uncertainty reflected in his eyes. "We have evidence," Sam said. "Testimony from other women about your son's behavior. A doctor's report that contradicts your version of events. Are you willing to allow all of that to be presented?" Hartwell's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "If it is the truth, then yes. I want the truth, Mr. Jacobs, as much as you do." Marshal Wheaton cleared his throat. "I have been in contact with Sam's cousin, Judge Robert Jacobs, in Denver. He has agreed to oversee the case if Sophia agrees to turn herself in. He can arrange for her to be held in Denver rather than Philadelphia until the trial, which would keep her away from Hartwell's direct influence. It is the best compromise I can offer." Sophia looked at Sam, her heart pounding. This was it, the moment of decision. Run and hide forever, or face the music and trust that the truth would set her free. Sam took her hand, squeezing gently. "It is your choice, Sophia. Whatever you decide, I will stand by you." She thought about the life they could have if this ended well. The ranch, the future, the love that was just beginning to bloom between them. She thought about the alternative, always running, always afraid, never truly free. "I will do it," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I will turn myself in and stand trial, but I want Sam with me. I want him there every step of the way." "I am not leaving your side," Sam said immediately. Hartwell stood. "Then we have an agreement. The marshal will make the arrangements. I expect this to proceed quickly." After Hartwell left, Wheaton sighed heavily. "You are doing the right thing, Mrs. Jacobs. For what it is worth, I think you are telling the truth. I have been doing this job long enough to know when someone is lying, and you do not have the look of a murderess. Thank you, Marshal. Judge Jacobs is a good man, hard but fair. If the evidence is as strong as you say, he will see justice done." The next week was a whirlwind of preparation. Sam sent telegrams to the women in Philadelphia who had agreed to testify, arranging for their travel to Denver. He contacted the doctor who had examined Charles's body, obtaining a sworn affidavit. Mrs. Porter helped Sophia prepare proper clothing for the trial, sewing a respectable dress that would present her as the decent, hard-working woman she was. Through it all, Sam never left her side unless absolutely necessary. They worked together during the day and held each other at night, stealing what moments of happiness they could before the trial. The love between them deepened with every conversation, every shared task, every quiet moment by the fire. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and crimson, Sam said, "Whatever happens in Denver, I want you to know that you have given me more in these few weeks than I have had in years. You have made this ranch feel like a home. You have made me feel like a whole person again." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder. "You saved my life, not just from the law but from despair. I was drowning when I came here and you threw me a lifeline. I will love you for that forever." "I do not want your gratitude," Sam said softly. "I want your heart." She turned to face him, cupping his weathered face in her hands. "You already have it, completely and irrevocably." They made love for the first time that night, a tender and passionate joining that sealed their commitment to each other. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Sophia felt something she had not felt in months: genuine hope for the future. The journey to Denver took 3 days by train. Sam arranged for a trusted neighbor to watch the ranch, then accompanied Sophia on the long trip north. Marshal Wheaton came with them, officially in custody of the prisoner, though he was kind enough not to put her in chains. Mr. Hartwell traveled separately with his hired men, keeping his distance but watching with hawk-like intensity. Denver was a bustling city compared to Fort Lyon, filled with the sounds of construction and commerce as the territory grew and modernized. Judge Robert Jacobs met them at the train station, a tall, severe-looking man in his 50s with Sam's gray eyes and an air of absolute authority. "Cousin," he greeted Sam with a firm handshake, "you have gotten yourself into quite a situation." "I married a woman I love who happens to be innocent of murder," Sam replied. "Seemed like the right thing to do." Robert's expression softened slightly as he looked at Sophia. "Mrs. Jacobs, I have read the preliminary evidence your husband sent. It is compelling, but ultimately the jury will decide your fate. I will ensure the trial is conducted fairly and that all evidence is properly presented. That is the best I can offer. That is all I ask, Your Honor." Sophia was remanded to the Denver Women's Jail, a relatively clean facility run by a stern but not unkind matron. Sam was allowed to visit daily, and he spent every possible moment with her, bringing books and news and, most importantly, his presence. His faith in her never wavered, and it became her anchor in the dark days before the trial. The trial itself began on a crisp October morning, 6 weeks after Sophia had first arrived in Fort Lyon. The courtroom was packed with spectators, drawn by the scandalous nature of the case and the presence of the wealthy Philadelphia banker. Sophia sat at the defendant's table with the lawyer Sam had hired, a sharp Denver attorney named Abigail Chase, who had a reputation for winning difficult cases. The prosecution presented their case first. The testimony of Mr. Hartwell about his son's character, the statements of Philadelphia police who described finding Charles's body, the autopsy report. But under Mrs. Chase's cross-examination, cracks began to appear. The police admitted they had not investigated Sophia's claims of assault. The autopsy, when examined closely, showed injuries consistent with a fall, not a beating. Then Mrs. Chase presented the defense. One by one, the women from Philadelphia took the stand and described Charles Hartwell's predatory behavior. Their testimony painted a picture of a man who had abused his power and position repeatedly, who had left a trail of victims too afraid to speak up. The courtroom gasped when one woman described an assault remarkably similar to what Sophia had experienced, though she had been too terrified of the Hartwell family's retribution to report it. The doctor who had examined Charles's body testified about the single injury to the temple, the lack of defensive wounds that would suggest a fight. the bruises on Sophia's arms that were consistent with being grabbed. He stated, clearly and professionally, that the physical evidence supported Sophia's account of events. Finally, Sophia herself took the stand. Mrs. Chase guided her through her testimony, and Sophia told the truth, simply and directly. She described Charles's months of harassment, the fear she had felt, the desperation of that final day. She described the torn sleeve, the shove, the horrible accident. She did not try to hide her terror when she had run from the office, or her horror when she returned to find him dead. "I never meant for him to die," she said, her voice breaking. "I was just trying to get away from him. I have regretted what happened every day since. But I am not a murderer. I was just a woman trying to protect herself." The prosecution's cross-examination was brutal, trying to paint her as a scheming opportunist who had killed Charles in a rage when he rejected her. But Sophia held firm, meeting the prosecutor's eyes and speaking with quiet dignity. In the gallery, Sam watched with fierce pride. When Mr. Hartwell was recalled to the stand, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Chase presented evidence that Hartwell himself had been contacted by 3 other women over the years, complaining about Charles's behavior. Each time, Hartwell had paid them off and covered up his son's actions. The revelation caused a sensation in the courtroom. "You knew," Mrs. Chase said, her voice ringing with accusation. "You knew your son was dangerous to women, and you protected him anyway. How many victims might have been spared if you had taken action?" Hartwell's face crumpled, and for the first time he looked like what he was, a grieving father confronting the ugly truth about his child. "He was my son," he whispered. "I thought I could control him, guide him. I never imagined it would end like this." Judge Robert Jacobs called for order as the courtroom erupted in murmurs. The trial continued for 2 more days, with closing arguments from both sides. Finally, the case went to the jury. Sophia sat in her cell that night, unable to sleep, knowing that 12 strangers held her future in their hands. Sam was allowed a special visit, and he held her through the bars, whispering reassurances and promises. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we are in this together," he said. "If they acquit you, we go home and build our life. If they do not, I will appeal, I will fight, I will move heaven and earth to free you. You are my wife, Sophia. They will have to drag me away before I abandon you." The jury deliberated for 6 hours the next day. When they finally returned, the courtroom was silent enough to hear a pin drop. The foreman stood, a weathered rancher who reminded Sophia of Sam. "We the jury find the defendant, Sophia Jacobs, not guilty of murder." The courtroom erupted. Sophia felt her legs give way, and only Mrs. Chase's quick grab kept her from collapsing. She heard Sam's shout of joy, saw him push through the crowd toward her. Judge Robert Jacobs banged his gavel, calling for order, but he was almost smiling. When Sam reached her, he swept her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "It is over," he said into her hair. "It is finally over. You are free." Sophia clung to him, sobbing with relief and joy. "We can go home. We can really go home." After the crowd cleared, Mr. Hartwell approached them. He looked 10 years older than when the trial started, his grief and guilt etched into every line of his face. "Mrs. Jacobs," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I was so consumed by my loss that I could not see the truth. My son, he was not the man I wanted him to be, and you paid the price for my blindness." He paused, his voice rough. "I am sorry, truly, deeply sorry." Sophia looked at this broken man and felt an unexpected stirring of compassion. "I am sorry, too. Sorry for your loss, and sorry that it happened the way it did. I never wanted any of this." Hartwell nodded, then turned and walked away, his shoulders bowed under the weight of his grief and guilt. Judge Robert Jacobs cleared them to leave Denver the next morning. As they stood on the train platform, waiting for the train that would take them back to Fort Lyon, Robert shook Sam's hand. "You did good, cousin." Standing by her took courage. "It was not courage," Sam replied. "It was love." Robert's stern face softened into something approaching a smile. "Maybe that is what courage is. Take care of each other." The train ride back was nothing like the anxious journey to Denver. Sophia sat pressed against Sam's side, watching the prairie roll past the windows, feeling lighter than she had in months. The warrant that had haunted her was gone. Her name was cleared. She was free to live her life without fear. Fort Lyon welcomed them back with quiet celebration. Beatrice from the general store had organized a small party at the church, and the townspeople who had supported them through the ordeal came to offer congratulations. Even Marshal Wheaton stopped by, gruff but pleased. "Knew you were innocent all along," he said. "Glad the jury saw sense." Back at the ranch, everything was exactly as they had left it. The cabin, the barn, the cattle grazing on the hillside, but it all looked different to Sophia now. Before, it had been a temporary refuge. Now it was truly home. That night, as they lay together in their bed, Sam said, "What do you want for our future, Sophia? Really want, with no fear holding you back?" Sophia thought about it, trailing her fingers across his chest. "I want to build this ranch with you, make it thrive. I want children, a house full of laughter and love. I want to grow old watching sunsets on the porch, surrounded by grandchildren." She paused. "I want the life that was stolen from me when Charles Hartwell died, but better, because I will be living it with you." "That sounds perfect to me," Sam said, kissing her forehead. "We will start tomorrow, but tonight, let's just be grateful we made it through." The months that followed were hard work but deeply satisfying. Sam taught Sophia everything about running the ranch, and she proved to be a quick and eager student. They expanded the herd, built a new barn, and started planning additions to the cabin. When spring came, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy tempered by anxiety. Childbirth on the frontier was dangerous, and they were far from medical help. But Beatrice, who had experience as a midwife, promised to be there when the time came. Their son was born on a warm July evening in 1879, a healthy baby with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Sam's father. Holding her son for the first time, feeling Sam's arm around her shoulders as they gazed at the tiny life they had created, Sophia felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. "He is perfect," Sam whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We made him," Sophia said in wonder. "Out of love and hope and stubbornness. We made this perfect little person." Thomas was followed by a daughter 2 years later, whom they named Sarah after Sophia's mother. Then another son, Michael, and finally another daughter, Emma. The cabin expanded with each child, growing from one room to a proper house with a parlor and separate bedrooms. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Sam's skill with cattle and horses, combined with Sophia's head for business and organization, made them a formidable team. They became respected members of the Fort Lyon community, known for their fairness in business dealings and their willingness to help neighbors in need. Sophia never forgot the women who had testified for her, the ones who had risked the Hartwell family's wrath to tell the truth. She corresponded with them over the years, and when 2 of them fell on hard times, she and Sam brought them west and helped them start new lives in Colorado. It became a pattern, Sophia quietly helping women who needed a fresh start, offering them work on the ranch or connections in town, giving them the same chance she had been given. Years passed. The children grew. Thomas became a skilled rancher like his father, taking over more of the daily operations as Sam's hair turned gray. Sarah married a teacher and moved to Denver, though she visited often. Michael became a veterinarian, combining his love of animals with a sharp scientific mind. Emma showed early signs of following in her mother's footsteps, with a keen business sense and a passion for justice. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Sam and Sophia sat on the porch of their expanded house, watching the sunset paint the prairie in familiar shades of gold and crimson. Their hands were linked, weathered now with age and work but still fitting together perfectly. "You ever think about that day?" Sam asked. "When you stepped off the stagecoach, terrified and alone?" "Sometimes," Sophia admitted. "It feels like a lifetime ago. Like it happened to a different person. In a way, it did. We have both changed so much." He turned to look at her, his gray eyes still holding the same warmth they had on their wedding day. "But some things have not changed. I still love you just as much as I did that day I told the marshal he would have to go through me first." Sophia squeezed his hand, her heart full. "Best decision you ever made." "Second best," Sam replied with a smile. "The best was asking you to be my wife in the first place." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the day fade into evening. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family. Thomas discussing cattle prices with his wife, Emma playing piano, the laughter of grandchildren. The ranch that Sam had built alone now teemed with life and love, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. Sophia thought about the scared young woman who had fled Philadelphia with a warrant on her name, certain that her life was over. She thought about the desperate gamble of answering a mail-order bride advertisement, the terror of that first day in Fort Lyon, the moment when everything could have fallen apart. And then she thought about the man who had stood between her and the law, who had believed in her when she barely believed in herself, who had fought for her and loved her and built a life with her that exceeded her wildest dreams. "Thank you," she said softly. Sam glanced at her. "For what?" "For seeing me, the real me underneath the fear and the accusations, for choosing to believe me when you had every reason not to." "It was not a choice," Sam said simply. "My heart knew the truth from the moment I met you. The rest was just details." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, two people who had found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. The warrant was long forgotten, the past truly behind them. What mattered was the present, the love that still burned bright between them, and the future stretching out before their children and grandchildren. Fort Lyon had grown over the years, transforming from a rough frontier town to a proper community with schools and churches and businesses. But the Jacobs Ranch remained a constant, a symbol of what could be built with hard work, faith, and love. People still talked about the mail-order bride who had arrived with a warrant on her name, and the cowboy who had declared they would have to go through him first. It had become a local legend, a romance that inspired young couples and reminded everyone that sometimes the greatest love stories began with the greatest risks. More years passed. Sam's hair turned completely white, and Sophia moved a bit slower, but their love never diminished. They celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The house rang with laughter and stories, and Sophia looked around at the family they had created and felt nothing but gratitude. That night, alone in their bedroom, Sam held her close and said, "If I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a single moment. Every hardship, every fear, every struggle led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be. Even the part where you faced down the law for a woman you barely knew," Sophia teased, "especially that part." Sam kissed her softly. That was when I discovered who I really was. Not a former soldier trying to outrun his past, but a man capable of standing up for what is right, no matter the cost. You gave me that gift, Sophia. You made me better than I was. We made each other better, Sophia corrected. That is what real love does. As they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, Sophia reflected on the incredible journey her life had taken. From secretary to fugitive to mail-order bride to rancher's wife to matriarch of a sprawling family. Every step had been terrifying and uncertain, but every step had been worth it. The ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's management. And when Sam and Sophia passed away within months of each other in their 70s, they left behind a legacy of love and integrity that shaped their family for generations. Their story was told and retold, becoming part of Fort Lyon's history, a reminder that courage and love could overcome even the darkest circumstances. The house they had built together remained in the family, expanded and modernized over the decades, but still fundamentally the same structure where they had raised their children and found their happiness. The land they had worked so hard to cultivate continued to support their descendants, a living testament to what two people could build when they refused to give up on each other. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sunset painted the prairie in shades of gold and crimson, people swore they could still feel the presence of Sam and Sophia Jacobs, watching over the ranch and the family they had created, their love as enduring as the land itself. The mail-order bride who had arrived with a warrant on her name had found not just freedom, but a love that transcended time and circumstance. And the cowboy who had declared that anyone who wanted her would have to go through him first had kept that promise every day of their lives together, standing as her protector, her partner, and her greatest love until the very end. Their story proved that sometimes the most beautiful futures grow from the most desperate beginnings, and that true love is not found in perfect circumstances, but in the willingness of two people to stand together against whatever challenges life throws their way. From that first terrifying day in Fort Lyon to their final peaceful days surrounded by family, Sam and Sophia Jacobs had lived a life that mattered, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. And in the end, that was the truest happy ending of all.